The user experience trend is getting stronger, with Kristina Azarenko from Marketing Syrup. Brought to you by Majestic, I'm David Bain, and this is SEO in 2022. Kristina, what's your number one SEO tip for 2022?
Hey everyone, so my number one tip for 2022 is to think more about user experience. Stop thinking about content as if we need to create SEO content. There is no SEO content. There is content that helps people and also optimized for search engines. So what I would say is that user experience has been a trend, has been important for a long time, but now it's getting even more and more important, especially with introduction of Core Vitals, that in 2022, 2022, is already coming to desktop, is also coming to desktop. So, I mean, a strong influence of user experience and SEO means that, first of all, you need to be useful, not just create content for the sake of creating content, but be useful. Also answer the user's questions, matching the user intent. So if you see that your users are struggling to find the information about something which is related to your service, create content about that, even though sometimes this content initially might not have a lot of search volume. If this content is useful for your users, it means that, first of all, some tools will not show you search volume for if it's not big enough to show, let's say so. And secondly, there will still be users who will be searching for this. And trust me, I've seen in many situations where you would create content with zero search, but then you end up getting so many impressions and clicks and visits to your website through these keywords. So that's amazing. Answer these questions, use user intent to do so. Also, load fast and secure. These are parts of Core Vitals. And be accessible and indexable. So, meaning technical SEO should still be your priority if there is something going on with your website, especially if you're using some fancy JavaScript framework. And as I said, just stop thinking about content as SEO content. Just think about content as the way to help your users and also drive users to your website and to your products, to services that you provide. Through good user experience and optimizing content.
So how do search engines actually measure user experience? I mean, it's one thing to deliver great user experience, and you can understand from a usability perspective why you want to ensure that your users are happy, but it must be quite tricky for search engines to determine what's a better user experience than something else. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, exactly. I would take a holistic approach, a holistic view of user experience. So first of all, matching user intent with your content. In terms of SEO, for me, it's part of user experience. User experience in this case is not like a designer. A designer would think of it, right? Just like have the right colors, typography, and all this kind of stuff, which is good. But the user experience, what I'm talking about, is more like is a more holistic view of it. Then user experience is making sure that the content is accessible, is making sure that using your website is not hard. You don't have interstitial. So basically, qualitative ways for Google to estimate how good your user experience is through Core Vitals and through looking at the content, like those interstitials, pop-ups that can be sometimes annoying. That's something that Google looks at, and also obviously user intent. And plus, there is also semantic SEO layer, where you don't want to just if you can answer a question with in using like 50 words, and this will be exact answer to the question, you don't need to go to beat around the bush and write 500 words to answer these questions just to get optimized. So that's what I would consider as user experience, and Google has direct and indirect ways to measure this, as I pointed out.
Yeah, that's such a more enjoyable way of delivering good SEO and delivering content that's actually satisfying for the users, for the content writer to produce as well. Because in the past, it was frustrating when it was effective just to write 500 words or 1,000 words on a particular topic and just rehashing the same thing. And it wasn't great user experience. So that's nice from the content producer perspective as well. Are there any software tools that you use to actually try to track what users are doing on your website? I mean, for instance, I've spoken to other people who have suggested using a service called usertesting.com. And it's a service that allows you to record videos of what people are doing on your website and get their feedback from that. Do you advocate something like that as well?
So what I sometimes use is Yandex Metrica. It's actually, so Yandex is a Russian search engine, and they have Yandex Metrica, which is basically kind of the same as Google Analytics, but from that search engine, right? But so Yandex Metrica is free, and it has also map of user clicks. You can record sessions, you can rewatch sessions afterwards and see how people are looking at your page. So it's very fascinating. Sometimes I use this service.
What are the biggest mistakes that many web designers or even SEOs are making from a UX perspective nowadays? So if you're looking at video recordings, for instance, what are the common issues that you tend to see in these video recordings?
Okay, so from designer, especially designer perspective and SEO perspective, what people do, which is actually not really related to recordings, but what people do is they use headings for styling, versus like headings should not be used for styling or just for styling. They should properly mark the content. So that's what I see. Like sometimes you'd have H1 here and there just because you don't know or don't care or something like that. To know that you can use, for example, H2 there or H3 and then use styling of H1. So that's one of the most common things when it comes to mind about designers. My husband is actually a UX designer, and it makes me so happy every time when I hear him saying SEO, SEO, SEO. He's learned so much. So, I mean, there is at least one UX designer in the world who knows more about SEO than some others. So, and when it comes to recordings, what's interesting for me is that I see that people don't actually read the content a lot. So you need to have the content in chunks, and also make sure that the headings are relevant to what your content is, like to the content that belongs to these headings. So think about this this way. So if you have a page and people would read only the headings, what would they get from this page? What would they understand? Because especially when I write content like for my pages, it makes me so sad when people don't read, but I get it, totally get it. So yeah.
Okay, so you've made your husband passionate about SEO. That's great. So how do SEOs then educate UX people and get them more knowledgeable and passionate about SEO? Is there a certain aspect of SEO that you need to train them in to make them understand it quite easily?
Yeah, I did a few trainings for designers actually, and I think the two most important aspects are, first of all, as I said, like headings and understanding that they are not for design only. They are also for marking up the content correctly. And the second thing, which is huge, is speed. So because designers are usually accountable for like images and things that are going on the website in terms of visual content. And what I usually find is that they want to have things really like clear and amazing, and that makes sense because they care about their job. But then at some point it might become really hard because they would upload big images, and it just doesn't help page speed. And one thing that I saw, which was really weird, is that there was a website and only part of an image, of a huge image, was used for, I don't know, for like kind of line or something. So the website, the page would always load this huge image, which was something like 4,000 by 4,000 pixels, and only part of this image would be used. So think about how much how much speed, how much bandwidth is used to load this. So if these two main things would be understandable for designers, it would be amazing.
So you touched upon how headings should be written with the user in mind. But what does this mean for keywords? Is it still important to incorporate keywords in headings and all the traditional places that you would put keywords?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, keywords are not going anywhere. They're just becoming more sophisticated because you're using semantics, you're using synonyms for those keywords. You just don't always say like, I don't know, like t-shirts, t-shirts, t-shirts. You use other words as well. T-shirts might not be, it's my favorite example, but it might not be the best example here. But anyhow, you're getting the point, so that you use synonyms and like variations of the keywords. But also, what I like doing sometimes is like, okay, you can have an H1 with keywords. Like for example, if I want to rank for a Toronto consultant or SEO consultant in Toronto, I can have it as an H1, and then I can have even bigger, which is fine, something that is H2, which is marketing marketing heading, like I help people who blah blah blah. So these kind of
Mm-hmm.
things, that's possible as well. But I'd still use like these web standards of using H1 for the most important thing that you're trying to convey in the website, not marketing, like marketing copy, right? So yeah, to this point, I would definitely include keywords, but it's so much easier when you think about semantics and when you think about variations and synonyms and all this kind of stuff.
So what does the greater importance of good user experience mean for the SEO role moving forward? Will the SEO in the future be less technical and more creative?
I think, well, first of all, it's, oh my God, I love this question. So when I was starting, there was just SEO, right? It was like, okay,
Mm.
there were backlinks, there was some on page, and the technical, people rarely would talk about technical. And now there's so much more like international SEO, news SEO, all this kind of stuff. So I think that going forward, this difference in roles will be even bigger. So of course SEOs would need to know technical SEO, but maybe even it's happening even now when there are more people who are dedicated to technical part. I'm really liking technical part, but and those people who are really obsessed about on page, because at some point when so in most of the cases it's enough to know this and this, but in some cases when people want to get, as you said, want to get creative and all these kind of things, they can move into a more content based role, which is fine, and there will be someone else who knows technical really good. Like for example, if you want to migrate or something, not every SEO, in my view, not every single SEO should be really expert in it. You're gonna have different people with different skills, because in my view, thinking about content and thinking about this creatively, from the SEO perspective, it requires a little bit different skills compared to technical SEO. Yeah, so these roles are going to be even kind of more separated in the future.
Understood very much. In fact, I'm definitely more of a creative SEO. When someone starts talking to me about things like pivot tables and Excel, then I just want to switch off. And but some SEOs love that kind of thing. So you've persuaded an SEO listening that they absolutely have to spend more time focusing in on user experience, but they haven't got much time. What's one thing that that SEO might be doing a lot of at the moment that's probably not a great use of their time? They should probably stop doing now in order to spend more time focusing on user experience.
Yeah, so I'd say stop obsessing about keyword rankings. I know that it's kind of easy to report on, but it's not the main goal. So it can either be used additionally to the main goals like revenue and important traffic, not just traffic for the sake of traffic, right? But we can also ditch keyword rankings for good, because it's not the main factor that shows that your SEO campaign is successful.
Great thoughts. Well, Kristina Azarenko is SEO consultant and founder at marketingsyrup.com. Kristina, thanks so much for being part of SEO in 2022.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for having me.
Check out the rest of the content from SEO in 2022 over at SEOin2022.com.